All right, last Niner reaction show of 2024. I know, some people wanted to lose the game and have draft position, and I was fine with it. I know a lot of people that voted on YouTube about whether or not they want to win the game because they're competitors or lose the game for draft position. The vast majority of people said win the game, and then you get in the game and you're playing the Lions and you definitely don't want to lose the game. You want to find a way to win. But as that game was going on, there was this sense that you could compete, play a good game, play a fun game, look like you belong, and then also lose in the end. And they're blah blah, be no shame in that, whatever. And then the Niners, did what they've done a few times this year, which is many times this year, which is not lose the way you'd want to lose. You don't want to lose. You'd like to lose a close one. In the end, the score was close, and the game actually was. You would have liked to lose with, Brock's leads him down on a touchdown. Moody doesn't miss the extra point. Maybe Moody hits a big field goal to tie it. Goff leads him down, scores. If the Niners defense had given up the game-winning touchdown drive, come from behind Goff thing, that would have felt bad, but it wouldn't have felt any different. It's not like there was some belief that everything the Niners had they needed going into next year on defense. Ricky Pearsall played a nice game, and that gets overshadowed by I'm laughing because I just saw a comment that said Sorensen and Moody were in their bags tonight. Great loss. I did, it's this this is not the time to celebrate. I'm not celebrating, but my 6-player lineup on Prize Picks, $20 did pay 500 because Moody didn't make that field goal. But anyway, who cares about that right now? Code guy. And if you're watching the live show, I don't know if I can. I think maybe I can just listen to Kyle Shanahan live when he starts talking, so we can at least hear the Purdy reaction. But it was a game that really, it was weird because it was shaping up to be a really good Purdy game. At halftime, he was 14 of 16, 200 yards, a couple of touchdowns. Goff at halftime was 11 of 13 for 138 and a touchdown. And it really is impressive. I mean, you have to give Goff a lot of credit, not tonight necessarily, but just what he's done with his career, the level of accurate passer that he's become. And he's become the kind of quarterback, and he's on the team that allows him to do it and that forces him to do it because he's in a lot of these games. But where I think Goff gets a lot of credit is he is forced to play in shootouts, and that's not great for winning a Super Bowl. Like I'm watching Detroit tonight thinking that Philly's going to be the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl, because their defense is a problem. But you got to give Goff credit. He ends up in these games, and he just makes throw after throw after throw after big throw after big throw after big throw, and it's really impressive. I mean, just darts and dimes, and he for a guy who's not very mobile, he moves well enough, and it's all great. I mean, it's really impressive. Now, I'm going to say this. I guess if you're listening to the podcast, we'll catch up on the information as we go. But just for the moment, to have this on the record in the moment, because I know there's a lot of, is it the UCL on Brock as we're doing this live? Is it the UCL? It did look to me, one of the trainers came over to him late and said something to him after the injury, and Brock said something back to him, and then the trainer said, "That's good." So I don't know if he asked him, but what was so weird about the play is it looked like a whole lot of nothing. Like if his UCL got hurt on that play, you're like, how would it not get hurt again? Now, I'm based on that interaction and that it looked like the trainers were looking at the wrist. We'll see. I will say this. If it is his UCL, remember, he hurt his UCL later and came back in time for the season. Just saying. Now there would be time to go sign Sam Darnold. I don't think the Vikings would let you do that. We'll see how their season ends, but trade for JJ McCarthy. It would be, wouldn't it be? Maybe I'll be wrong. We'll hear. I think Brock's going to be fine. But while we have this moment, at least, wouldn't it be so Niners to look like you're headed to an offseason? Not that there wouldn't be drama. What are they going to do? Defensive coordinator. What are they going to do with Moody? What are they going to do in a lot of spots? But it would be so them to all of a sudden have this humongous quarterback problem. And I know you already viewed it as there was going to be some controversy, some stress based on the Purdy contract, but wouldn't an injury just be something else entirely? But we'll see. We'll get with that as it happens, and I'll tell you exactly what Kyle says. It may be out there if you see something on social before Kyle talks. Maybe somebody in the locker room talks to Brock, and Brock tells him I'm good and all that. But it would just be so Niners. I mean, again tonight, I'm building this list of, as I do every game, you just go through all the stuff Brock does. The stuff he does well, the stuff he doesn't do well, the good throws, the unimpressive stuff. And, what happens when you introduce money is what's happened here with Brock, is that every game and every throw is evidence. And I said this on Sunday night after the Vikings game. Oh, here. Can you guys hear this? If not, I'll listen to you. All right. So status is up in the air. He doesn't really have a clear answer on Brock. All right. That's what he said. Tell me if you could have heard that. It'd be nice to know that I could share the video with you and you could hear the audio. But regardless, he answered 2 quick questions. It sounded like he may get more of them. So we'll keep an eye on it. But anyway, this is going to be, I know how this is. This is the nature of being Goldilocks on some of this Purdy stuff. Because I saw a comment from somebody earlier, and they said, "Guy, I ripped you because earlier this year because you said that Nick Wright made a good point about Brock Purdy." And I thought, this person in the chat said, and that was wrong of you. And now you were right about Brock Purdy. And the thing is, I've said a lot of stuff. I think I feel a lot of things that to me are not contradictory of one another, but they end up in contradictory categories because everybody picks a side on Brock. Like either he's a $60 million quarterback. Actually, I don't think there's a lot on that side right now. Either he's a $50 million quarterback, you have to pay him, or he's trash and he ain't the guy. And as I've said, I think there's a world where they don't pay him $50 million, $55 million, somewhere in that range, provided, health is a separate issue. And that he's still, a guy that can play the way he played last year. It was funny when the game started. Joe Buck said something along the lines of, Purdy's had a regression year this year, and he has statistically. The part that I think about before I speak on Brock is it sounds like. I'm not sure what it sounds like, but I'll tell you what I think. I don't think he's changed that dramatically from last year. And I think if you were somebody who said, he's very dependent on the talent around him and the coaching and the ability to run the ball, I think that's correct. I also think that what that doesn't mean is that anybody could step in and do what he does. So what I said on Sunday night that I saw there was a lot of chatter, I got a lot of good YouTube comments on it, was that Sam Darnold is having this year the year that Brock Purdy had last year. And I think that's what's happening. And I don't think the Niners would be better if Sam Darnold were the 49ers quarterback this year, I think it'd probably be about the same. And it's entirely possible that Darnold runs it back again next year and plays the same way on the Vikings. It's also very possible that he has a year just like Brock is having right now. What does that mean? That means that with health around him, and a good roster and a run game and a defense and, all those things, that Brock could have a similar year to the one that he had last year. That is all to say, I think it is a criticism and potentially a positive outlook thing to say about Brock, to say that not a lot has changed from last year this year with him. It's been more about what has surrounded him. And I think that's what's happened. And I think you could definitely look at that as an indictment that he's not a $55 million quarterback. I think it is an indictment that he's not a $55 million quarterback. But I also don't think it's new information that we learned tonight or last week or even, in the middle of the year. I think the thing that was potentially going to happen this year was that, if he had the same year statistically that he had last year, which is what happens sometimes with guys who get paid a lot of money, is they have, incredible statistical seasons. And you're not going to argue, well, my guy isn't as good as his stats. Nobody would argue that. And the agent's going to be like, well, look at the stats. I think this is where, Dak ends up. What's interesting with Purdy, and his health right now is more important. But what's interesting with Purdy is, he's 20 touchdowns, 11 picks this year. You don't get huge money. You don't get huge money after a year like that. I'm just going to go to a couple of these tweets here because I know some of you are giving me some comments that it is Brock's elbow. So let's see if anybody who is Kyle Shanahan says Brock Purdy left the field, injury to his right elbow. Status up in the air for the finale. All right. So Brock Purdy's right elbow. That obviously opens up all of the questions about his UCL. And I think the thing that was the most damning is when you watched him try to throw on the sideline. And seeing him throw on the sideline, he looked the way he looked against the Eagles. And then his face, he looked very upset. I recorded a video just of the TV because I wanted to watch and go back and see if I could read lips. And while I was watching it, the one thing that's just so apparent is how upset he looks, like really upset, understandably upset. So whether that's a UCL, whether it's just a nerve issue, because it didn't look physically the way that it looked in the Eagles game. But, here we go. Here we go. Welcome to another 49ers offseason. They still got to battle it out with the Eagles in week 18, but welcome to another 49ers offseason. This is how we do things around here. The drama never stops. Kick the tires on Rodgers. I don't think so. That's a separate conversation. But Brock looked very, very, and I say this in the most humane way possible, scared, upset on the sideline at the end of the game, as I would be. And I honestly, I felt for him. Now, does this create a situation where, I don't know, we'll see. There's all these scenarios. That's why I said we'll see. We're like, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I guess whatever. We're just hanging out talking. If it's a longer term thing, then it does affect to some degree how much he gets paid. Now the agent would say, no, he'll be back and ready to, he'll pass a physical in a month. But if he doesn't play next week and this requires more than just this is a longer term thing. Maybe it's not a surgery thing, but it's a longer term thing. Is there going to have to be another physical before a contract? It just makes things a little hairier. And, in addition to that, the Niners have been scarred by a few things. Kyle has to be scarred scarred by the Trey Lance experience, which he brought on them. Like it didn't happen to him. But scarred by that situation and that evaluation, scarred by Jimmy Garoppolo and Jimmy being, it's too early to say that this is exactly Jimmy again, because we don't know how severely Brock is hurt. Maybe it's nothing-ish. But, that experience of the experience that sent them to draft Trey Lance, I didn't think it was totally truthful when the 49ers said, hey, basically the only reason we went and drafted a quarterback, Trey Lance, was because Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't stay healthy. I think it was clear to them they needed to try and find a little bit more of a dynamic presence at quarterback. If Jimmy had never gotten hurt, maybe he'd still be their quarterback, but maybe Brock would have beaten him out by now. But they were scarred by that. And so now you look and you think, are we going through it again? A guy who ends 2 of 3 seasons in a row injured. If it's a surgery type situation, that would really rattle them, and it would open the door for them to investigate another quarterback. And the thing about Kirk Cousins is he's going to be Russell Wilson levels cheap. So these are all things that are going to come up. This is all playing out in the background of this Brock Purdy situation. I'll put that aside for a second just to talk about the way he played, which was, those 2 interceptions were frustrating. I thought the first interception was, and I would need maybe a more quarterback mechanical guy, but I thought the first interception was a result of not being tall, of being shorter quarterback. There was nobody within 5 yards of his face, so it's not as if he was getting pressured. But I think today's a great example when you get to watch quarterbacks side by side. Goff's height allows him to cover the first layer of defenders more easily than Purdy, meaning that Goff can almost throw, if you're running across the middle of the field and the job is to get it over the defensive line, but in front of the second layer of defense, or in front of the safety, I guess maybe the second layer is running with your receiver in this case. When your job is to layer it like that, for Purdy, it has to go a little bit up and then come back down. And that's a really tough touch throw to make. Whereas with Goff, it doesn't have to go up as much. It comes out of his hand at more of a down angle to get over the middle of the field. And it's just a wider margin for error than Brock has. So, I've not stood in that position. Maybe he would say, "Nah, that ball just got away from me." But I thought that's what the first one was. The second one was him getting read the whole way. Pearsall was the only receiver to the right. Brock's head, there was a little play action, but Brock's head turns right, follows him, and Kirby Joseph knew exactly what was coming and jumped up and intercepted the ball. And, I know I saw David Lombardi tweeted, and a lot of people have posted that that was the 10th of 10 straight pass plays called by Kyle Shanahan. And as Peanut says on the stream, DB's just lying in wait. The 49ers had 16 pass plays at halftime. Counting some quarterback sneaks, they had 15 run plays. The 49ers ran the ball twice in the second half by my count, and threw it 19 times. 20 times if you count that kind of push pass end around to Debo, which maybe you could count that as a run and make it 3, but what difference does that make? Kyle Shanahan got kind of sucked in. It started as a really good Shanahan game. And then he got sucked into playing as if he had to keep scoring with the Lions fast. when he had the lead. So it was bizarre. It's like he just thought, well, we're not playing for anything. Let's just see if we can play this type of game. A real conspiracy theorist would say he wanted to put Brock in that situation and see if he could keep throwing it. But it's so unlike him to throw and throw and throw and throw and throw and throw with the lead. It's one thing if you're down 2 scores, but they weren't down 2 scores. They were down a score. They were down 34-28. And it wasn't, it wasn't 10 straight throws down 34-28. Some of those were down 31-28. So I understand you had to keep scoring, but you just needed one. And then they were going to get the ball. Then they're going to score. And then you're going to get the ball back and you're going to try and score. So it was bizarre. But it wasn't just that sequence. It was the whole second half. They just threw the ball. Now, in his defense, Detroit feels to me like the anti-Chiefs right now. I know I've said Dan Campbell Coach of the Year for just what he's done with the Lions. It's like a 2-year award for me. But he's not a guy that I really trust in the postseason. And their defense is bad in many ways. Now, it's been shredded by injury in their defense, but it's not good. They're the number 2 scoring offense in the league. The Chiefs are 11th. I don't want to denigrate Goff because I kind of do trust him now late in games. So I hate to say this, but they score the points. The Chiefs don't score the points, but the Chiefs score when they have to score late. But you could argue the Lions do that too. But they just like, why you get sucked into that game? Like it's an imbalanced game. You don't have to get sucked into it just because they're scoring. So he did put his guy in a bad spot there. But I also understand he might say, guys, he had 377 yards, 3 touchdowns at that. Not exactly 377 at that point. Behind an offensive line that, a lot of moving parts. They're rotating at left tackle. We thought they might have to, the funny thing is not funny. I said on Sunday, like, will Brock survive this game with this offensive line? And the answer was no. But it really wasn't because the offensive line wasn't great. I will say, though, this is the risk of being a team that throws the ball 35 times, which is what he threw. Brock Purdy threw the ball 35 times. When you throw the ball 35 times, just like if you've got a team where your quarterback runs the ball, when you throw the ball 35 times, you expose your quarterback to stuff. Now, this was the nature of the game. But it's just something to keep in mind. We're like, I wish my team did X or Y. Like, nah, throwing 22 times and throwing 19 times and running the ball effectively, that's really the recipe. And what'd they run it? 4 yards a carry? That's not exactly right. I mean, I think they ran it, I said twice. I think there's a Josh Dobbs run in there that I didn't count. But regardless, the touchdown run. But regardless, it was a complete imbalance in the second half when it didn't have to be. Kyle Shanahan said, doctors said he got hit on the right spot on his nerves and can't feel anything. Okay. His seeing him throw felt like the Eagles game all over again. So here we go. Enter us into this world. Comment from Andrew. Aaron Rodgers over Cousins for sure. Oh, yay. We're doing that. That's not it. Blah, blah, comment, you don't got to make excuses for a franchise QB, a real franchise QB. You know, I don't think there's a ton of debate. There's 4 or 5 of those guys. Oh, Brock Purdy is people. Somebody wants to see Tanner Mordecai. Is he still on the team? My arm was on fire, and I tried throwing a couple on the sidelines, and I couldn't at that point. So it has nothing to do with tapping out. Okay, yeah, we know he didn't tap out of the game. We'll see tomorrow, says Brock. All right. Asked if it was similar to the pain in the Philadelphia game when he hurt his UCL. It was similar, and I'm good. We did some tests in regards to the UCL, and I'm good in that regard, is what Brock said. So he said we did some tests in regards to the UCL, and I'm good in that regard. So we got to do some imaging tomorrow. Jay Harrison says, you either come through in the clutch or you don't. Purdy isn't that guy. You know, I think that's been one of the most disappointing parts of this season is that he's had some chances late in games and thrown some big picks, some bad picks and some big picks. And they've come at times when the Niners have offensive momentum, it feels like. Not all of them, but tonight that, you know, it felt like they hit a big play, get the ball moving, interception. And, you know, I think a lot of it goes back to he sees the field really well. I think a lot of it goes back to, you remember the Christmas Day game against the Ravens, where those guys basically said afterwards, we know if we know where the ball's going, we're just running the spots. And I think I don't think he's changed. I don't think he's playing scared. I think he's thrown a lot of I think he's made a lot of good throws after interceptions. Like when you watch his body language after interceptions, when you watch the way he plays after interceptions, it's not that. He doesn't play afraid after picks. Even in the Ravens game, when maybe you wanted him to, a good buddy of mine who I work with on Big Ten Network calling football games, Yogi Roth, he does the Elite 11 quarterback stuff, has for years. And many years ago, he introduced me to this acronym, PACE, PACE, plays after critical errors. How does a quarterback respond plays after critical errors? He's fine with that. Like it's not that stuff. It's that it's really, to me, it's black and white stuff. It's not like the invisible, emotional, is he afraid stuff. It's he plays in a way that is, he has a thin margin for error, thinner than most, for a variety of reasons. And one of those reasons is he doesn't have an extraordinary arm, extra strong arm. And so he has to throw with anticipation and precision. I thought the 3rd down and 10, which was the ball out to the left to Juwan Jennings, past the sticks, the first possession the Niners didn't score on, that was a really good example of precision and arm strength. If you're just a little behind or the ball doesn't quite get there early enough, then it's going to be a pass breakup. And that's what happened on that play. And I think that's part of what happens. He has to throw with so much anticipation and an average, at best, honestly, arm strength. People get upset when I say that as if it's like a debatable thing. It's just the thing. And if he's going to be a starting quarterback, he's got to do other stuff really well, which he does for the most part. But it's not a debatable thing. His arm is average at best, which is a testament to how much he sees the field really well. He has to, because he doesn't have a great arm. He has guts. He has to, because he has to throw with anticipation. It takes guts. It takes vision. It takes processing. He's ahead of the curve on a lot of those other things. He has to be because of his arm. And So I think he's a thin margin guy. And the more when you throw the ball 35 times and you have 10 straight pass plays and you're a thin margin guy, it bites you. It can bite you. Not it bites you, it can bite you. And when you're playing with lesser talent than you need to be your best, it bites you. And I think that's what happened. Ryan says Purdy is awesome, way above mid. I also agree with that. I do think it's pretty awesome that he has the ceiling he has. And I think one thing he's shown this year is that his floor is acceptable on a talented, good team with a good defense, right? Like he's a top 15 quarterback as a floor, which is acceptable. Like to me, you don't go trying to get Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins if you think you can put a good team together and you got a healthy Brock Purdy. So I do think he could end up back near the numbers he had last year because I don't think he changed that much, which is also the argument not to pay him $50 million. Comment from Kim. This is a good one. He sees the field real well, until he doesn't. Yeah, you're not going to see it perfectly every time. And it's just harder for him to get away with those mistakes. Like the ball that got red for the second interception. If Justin Herbert's throwing that ball, it might just get to Pearsall before the DB can get there. It was on time. It was an accurate throw to Ricky. He just got undercut by the defensive back. 377 yards, as we talk about a lot. It's the best games are not the games necessarily where you throw for 377. If you go look, and the stats bear this out, we looked it up earlier this year. Those highest passing games are losing games for the most part. The games where you're throwing for the most yards when you're one of the highest passing totals of the week, those are generally losing efforts. And if I told you before the game, if you told me before the game that Goff was going to throw for 300 and the Lions would run for 152 and that Purdy would throw for 377 and the Niners would run for 75. If you gave me those four stats and said, what's going to happen? I would tell you, Niners are going to lose. Like you would take 300 passing yards and 152 rushing over 377, and really Dobbs threw for 35. So 412 passing yards for the Niners to 75 rushing yards. You would absolutely take that Lions line. So don't get fooled by that. Trade Brock. Go get a top 5 QB. Trade Brock for what to who? Get a top 5 QB from where? All right, let me get to some of these super chats. Guy, I ripped you earlier for your Nick Wright comments. I apologize. You were right. Butter Nutter says, I could use some Puestos right now. Yeah, the Puesto ad run for the season is done. Puesto advertised every year for home games. This was the Niners' last home game. Just a final thank you for the 2024 season to Puesto, Mexican Artisan Kitchen. This is not a paid ad. This is just me saying thank you to a great supporter, great advertiser, a great company. So to Eric Adler and the Adler brothers, the Adler family, Puesto, everybody at Puesto Mexican Artisan Kitchen, the 2 Levi Stadium locations, the 2 Bay Area locations, the Southern California locations. Just because they're done at Levi's for the season does not mean you should stop supporting them. It's fantastic. I will definitely be headed there some point in the new year soon because I love their food. I love their their vibes, great atmosphere. I love their drinks. And you will too. And I appreciate they're Niner fans through and through. They started this awesome restaurant. They built it out, have several locations around California and 2 in Levi Stadium. So just a opportunity to say thank you to them, to all of you, and remind you to go support. If you want, you'll be very happy. You'll be very happy. Jared Super Chat says, I only need 150 more yards to hit on a Prize Pick season-long parlay. Help me, guy. Might be toast on that. I had one as well with him and Lions punter Jack Fox throwing more than half a yard. We're not seeing Brock against the Arizona Cardinals. I would not expect that. James Super Chat. Kyle Shanahan called 10 straight pass plays when they were down 1 score. 10 straight. Then the interception. Then another 6 pass plays. Do you think it's because the defense can't make a stop almost ever? It's a chance to talk about whether or not Nick Sorensen is back next year. And it does not feel, and I know the Lions are not necessarily the team to judge against, but you could argue they're exactly the team you should judge against. They're the type of team that you got to beat in 2026 or 2025 and maybe 2026, but 2025. Like, can you hang with the Lions? And if you can't score and score and score and score with them, which I don't think you can without getting stops, then you need to actually use them as a measuring stick. If your goal is win a championship, then you can't say, well, let's not judge them against the Lions because that's unfair. I mean, that's the creme. That's the second leading scoring team in the league. No. Judge them against the Lions on defense. That's exactly who they're going to have to beat. Let's just say they win the NFC West next year. You're going to see them in the NFC Championship game? You know who else scores? The Eagles score. The Rams score. The Packers score, but also make mistakes for you. The Lions score, and their players don't make mistakes. Their head coach and no Ben Johnson next year. We'll see. The head coach makes mistakes, but their offensive personnel does not make mistakes. So you got to be buttoned down when you play Detroit. And that means you need more than what they're getting out of their defense right now. And that means players, for sure. One of the things, so many things went wrong, that one of the things that got overlooked this year with Isaac Yiadom was not a great signing. But Malik Mustafa, great. Renardo Green, promising. But a coordinator is the easiest way. And easy's not the right word, but it's the easiest way to take a big jump on defense because there's no salary cap on coordinators. So to answer the question, James, with that comment, do I think they threw the ball so much because the defense can't make a stop? When you're down 1 score, you don't have to play the game like that. Isaiah says, Super Chat, guy, I blame your picks for Moody's downfall. Yeah, $20 played 500 today on Prize Picks for me because I hit all 6 picks in a lineup, including Jake Moody less than 6.5 points today. He had 4 or 5, whatever, but he didn't have 7, which he would have had if he made that first, the 51 and or the 58-yard field goal. The 58-yard field goal, whatever, doesn't bother me. I've had a few people text and say, do you think Kyle was running him out there to embarrass him or something like that? No, no chance of that. That's not what Shanahan was doing, but Shanahan does not run him out there because he needs to protect him. You're on this team. You got to go make kicks. I'm not going to not put a 58-yarder out there because it's a low percentage kick and you might miss it and feel bad about it. If he's not going to make the 58-yarders, then he really doesn't have the value because he's wonky on the 40-yarders. So if he's not going to make from 51 to 58, then where's the trade-off? Then he misses the extra point. Then he misses then he hammers the bad onside kick. They've had two. I think they've had 2. They had the sideways spinning onside kick this year. Was that him or Wisnowski? It was him. Bad. They've had 2 bad onside kicks. It was interesting last week. It seemed Kyle was very angry at Moody. An obvious opportunity to, say he's not going to be back. And then Kyle kind of went over the top this week, Shanahan's saying, yeah, Moody's going to be back and we believe in him and all that kind of stuff. But, I think this team has a good chance to be better next year. The margins are still going to be thin, and they cannot afford to have Jake Moody. I'm not going to do what everybody is doing right now because it's just like, leave him on the tarmac. I saw my guy Tyler Raber in the comments, who once carried me to a 2-on-2 victory over Middlecoff, and somebody who lost that day, but cut him today. He's so cheap. He's not going anywhere now. You've invested at least in trying to rehab him this offseason, but you got to bring in somebody else next year. The problem with that, it just feels so hollow to say that because he probably beats out whatever guy you bring in. Like, are you really bringing in somebody? Or are you bringing in, who was the guy they had 2 years ago? It was like, yeah, are you bringing in Anders Carlson? It's like, yeah, well, Moody is going to beat him out over the course of a month. Super chat from Lucas. Big fan of the pod. I think safety play is underrated concern. Huff takes a lot of bad angles. Brown can't tackle. Not convinced by Mustafa either. Yeah, I mean, to me, in an ideal world, Mustafa is back with somebody who can cover next year. I agree. It is a concern. Because, like, the Brown-Hufanga combo isn't good enough, and the Mustafa-Hufanga combo is probably the better combo, but doesn't feel good enough. Thomas with a Canadian $13.99 in the super chat. I'll have to convert that later. On all the Lions touchdowns, Fred Warner had his hands in the air because of apparent blown coverages. That's on the coaching staff. And should Mike the Niners evaluate Sorensen? Nick Bosa played great against Penei Sewell. Good to see him go. There was one touchdown early, the second touchdown of the game. The Lions were running. It looked like Nick Saban's old Alabama with just like Jahmyr Gibbs running free, Jameson Williams running WAO, wide ass open free, flip plays. But I remember one early touchdown. I think it was like the Jameson Williams end around where two 49ers kind of run into each other and knock each other out of the way, and he scores going to the left corner of the end zone. And pre-snap, if you go back and watch pre-snap, the linebacker, Flanagan Foles, is like talking to Bosa, stands up and is like, what? And then gets back down into his stance. And there's a miscommunication there. And there was obviously the miscommunication. The fourth down touchdown. Here's the thing. We can talk about wanting a better draft pick, and it's okay if you lose from that standpoint, although, as we said, it doesn't feel okay. But it wasn't okay to them. It wasn't okay to John Lynch. His reaction after that, when they showed him on TV, after that fourth down touchdown, he was very angry. And I don't know, it looked like I think the Niners coach's box might have been to his right. He wasn't just yelling into the air. It didn't feel like. It felt like he was yelling at somebody. He was very upset. And that's the kind of thing, too, that somebody just sent me a picture of my buddy Jonathan just sent a photo of John Lynch pounding the desk and said, "Listen, this is what it's like listening live right now." Yeah, man. I mean, seeing that anger from John Lynch kind of fired me up, actually. Got me excited. Like, no, okay, they're not just going to roll it. I think one of the worst things they can do is just roll it back next year and say, well, as long as everybody's healthy, we get everybody healthy, then it's all going to be okay. And that is not the recipe. Especially when you've seen it comes with mistakes, but just some of the energy that guys like Renardo Green, new blood, Malik Mustafa bring. Now, the other thing is, like, Kittle's got to be back. He's your best player. I mean, he's got to be back. The beginning of the year, maybe there was some, I don't know. Kittle's got to be back. And if you're George, you're thinking, I'm making these guys pay for this. but there is no doubt that they know that they need me. So it felt good to see John Lynch pound the table and screaming, and he's so part of what makes him effective as a leader is that he's not emotional, and he's buttoned down, and he's thoughtful, and he's in control of his emotions. You know, I've said, I think, as a lot of people have, he's a very good match for Kyle because John talks more like an optimist. And I have no problem with a coach who talks like Kyle Shanahan. But you need a balance. And I think, and this feels very superficial to say, and so I don't feel good about saying it, but it's just a real observation. Their last two defensive coordinators were not Sorensen and Wilkes, did not have the same type of personality that Saleh and you know, Saleh, it felt like from the beginning was a real kind of rah-rah guy. DeMeco Ryans maybe showed more of it than you thought he would have. But I think both of them were like positive. And maybe Nick Sorensen's super positive. Wilkes, didn't feel that way. But they were good, I thought, just in the stew for Shanahan because he's got just so angry, which I like that in a coach, but you need a little balance. So anyway, Lynch is a good balance, and that's why it was good to see. And look, to be clear, John Lynch is a Hall of Fame NFL player. Safety, not some finesse position. It's not like it's surprising, or it's not. We already knew John Lynch had that in him and that he cares. He turned down a lot of money to work in television because he'd rather be, you know, in the fight, in the competition. So that's not surprising, but it does. They got to make some angry decisions this offseason, you know. Make some decisions with some urgency. Like, no, we're pissed off and we got to do something here. Not just backpedal, be afraid of the salary cap, and count on everybody else to be healthy to bring it back. Tim Kawakami wrote a piece in the San Francisco Standard before the game. He talked to Jed York before the game, and he told him John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan aren't going anywhere, as they shouldn't be. It did feel good early in the game to remember what it was like to watch a game that felt like it mattered, even though this game didn't matter. For a little bit there, I was like, oh, yeah, this is – you remember these games? Like they scored points? The Niners have played in some of the most boring games in the NFL this year. The thing that made that 6-3 Bears-Seahawks game so painful the other night was that I just watched the Niners play that game. I don't want to watch this game again. Let's give Ricky Pearsall let's take a moment here for Ricky Pearsall now. Today, I mean, it was great. Ricky had, what was his final line? 8 for 141. Awesome. Career high, career day. I thought what was great about it, as you do the math real quick, that's 17.6 yards per carry per reception. But I thought what was great about it, without even looking at the averages, he had a catch of 14 yards, he had a 40-yard catch, he had a 39-yard catch, he had a 15-yard catch, he had a 14-yard catch. Had a lot of big plays. The one-handed catch. So that was great to see. Looked like he belonged. Got to keep doing it. You know, I was happy to see him have a breakout game. The real test is, do you go for 8 and 141, but do you go 6 and 67? Do you bring that? You know, are you able to just do what Juwan Jennings does every day? Who, by the way, is tough as shit and just takes big hit after big hit after big hit. So, but it was awesome to see Ricky Pearsall do that. Was not awesome to see Jacob Cowing not sell the pick. I think, when Shanahan's talking about rookie receivers learning, that's probably part of it. That wasn't great. Look at here I had 2 officiating notes for you today. So anyway, I'm not going to spend 10 minutes on Pearsall, but that was awesome. 2 officiating notes, just 2 quick thoughts. This is not at the top of everybody's mind. The funny thing, they called the delay a game against the 49ers, which was correctly called. Like the clock kicked 0. The ball is not yet moving. It gets snapped at the last moment. And they called delay. And even Joe Buck is like, timeout. Somebody, they must have called a timeout. I've never seen a delay a game called that accurately. Like you can't even be mad at it because it was the right call. They never call it like that. I wonder if there's a point of emphasis on it. Although I haven't seen it called like that in other games. But I wonder if there's if the NFL doesn't love when everyone points out that it's weird that a delay game actually comes at like -0 seconds, -1 second. And I don't know. It made me wonder if there was a point of emphasis. The second thing I wanted to say on officiating Monday night was the Tatum Bethune fumble recovery for a touchdown. By rule, it's not a touchdown. He was down. But there should be some update to the rule book that accounts for the difference between someone touching you down and you touching someone else who is also down. That happens a lot. It happens on like interceptions where somebody's toe grazes somebody's calf and like, oh, well, he was down. There's no interception return, just down where he dove to catch it. But like that Tatum Bethune play, he dives on the ground to recover it. He touches somebody else's like big toe. They called it right. It's not a touchdown, but like also in the spirit of the rule, I think kind of should be moving forward. I'd love to see them adjust that. Comment, credit to Kyle for calling an aggressive game and putting his players in position to make plays. The Lions made plays when they needed to. Outside of him abandoning the run in the second half, this is probably not popular today, but that is where I net out on Monday night with Shanahan's game. Just fun to see him go for it. Another super chat. Comment, do you know if Moody can be cut without a big penalty? Yeah, I mean, he can be. He's not making a lot of money. But that's part of the reason you're not rushing to cut him either. It's like he's just some of these kickers, you don't have a lot of space. You don't want to pay a $4 million kicker or $5 million if you could avoid it. He's not an expensive kicker, So Cam's dad is the name of a commenter who says, a QB coach said that Purdy can get stronger. Purdy did get stronger, I thought, last offseason. I don't think that's his issue. Your arm can improve mechanically with flexibility, your rotation, the torque. I remember who wrote it. There was a good article maybe a month or two ago about the guys that Brock works with down in Florida who really loosened up his shoulder and created more rotation. And I don't pretend to, know all the biomechanics of it, but a really interesting article. Because of his brain, when I say his arm is average, what I'm not saying that means he can't do special things. Look at it like when you create a player, he's got less of this, but he's got some more something else. And the fact that he plays the way he plays with that arm is special. Oh, and he had a rushing touchdown too. But so it's just a reality of it. So can he get a little stronger? Maybe. I thought he made it, and no one wants to hear it now. I thought he made some really good, forget about the stats. He made some really good plays under pressure, some really impressive throws. That, on another day, on another team with a better defense and a better run game, he's not in a position to throw that pick late. But that's not this team. And I think people will use that to say, and that's why you're not a $55 million quarterback. And I think there's truth to that. He's not a carrier like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow. He's not that. Neither is Dak, who got paid. So I think if he's healthy, he'll end up with top 10 money, but not top 5 money. And it won't hit the salary cap in any significant way in 2025. Well, I shouldn't say that. It will be in a significant way, but not $60 million. But I also think, like, here's a comment. He's not a franchise guy. I think that I don't know what the name is for this. Franchise guy is the guys I just mentioned, right? Like true, like that's what we mean when we say franchise quarterback, right? Like Josh Allen, Lamar. There's 4 or 5 of those guys. Maybe Jordan Love will become one. Everyone thought for sure CJ Stroud was going to be one. He may be in that tier 2 category, and maybe that's the word, tier 2. But even tier 2, tier 1 is so tiny. But then there's also a category of guy, if we just say Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, those are franchise guys. There's also a category of guy that, while they're not that level of franchise quarterback, are a level of quarterback that you're not trying to replace every offseason. Like, how can we? You're like, this is good enough. Let's get better on the offensive line. Let's get better on the defensive line. Let's get a good receiver in here. Let's upgrade. And it's good enough because it's impossible to upgrade. You never want to say impossible, but there's, I think that's the question I get asked a lot is like, can you go back to the Super Bowl with this quarterback in 2025? I believe that you can. That doesn't mean he's a, franchise quarterback by definition of the Josh Allen franchise quarterback, Lamar Jackson thing. But to me, he is another category of franchise quarterback where you can look up and have, 5 years in an 8-year stretch where you're competing to go to the conference championship game. Who's your other guy? It's you'll be drafting whatever 10th. I promise you, there's not a quarterback in this. Now, maybe somebody will turn out to be, but there's not a quarterback in this class that people think, oh, that's who you should draft at 10. And you can't get the guy, the other guys that'll be at the top of the draft, nor should you, trade what it would require to get there. You already tried that once. Anyway, I think for sure he could take a team to the Super Bowl. He's done it already. Yeah, I mean, the question becomes, the team will change, but the issue is not that he's capable. It's how much do you pay and what else does it cost you? But I'm not on Brock Purdy. Let's look at his efficiency stats and say he's a top 3 quarterback in the league team. But I'm also not on Brock Purdy crumbled this year. Brock Purdy crumbles. I think he's clearly not great playing from behind, but I think it's more skill set and offense based than it is he mentally crumbles or isn't mentally capable of doing it, if that makes sense. Yeah, and then you look up, and another year will come and go. Patrick Mahomes won't win the MVP, but he's got one of the best coaches in the league. He's got a really good defense, and they've lost one game somehow. It's amazing. We're on the verge of what could be a very complicated quarterback situation for the 49ers. Here's one thing. Somebody said to me a couple weeks ago, like, is it tough? Do you think it's going to be a tough off? What do you do in the offseason when it comes to creating when there's Niners discussions? I was like, every year as we approach the end of a season, I wonder to myself, what did I do? I've been doing this in some form or fashion since 2005. Now, I will say from like 05 to 2016. Now, 05 to 16, like 14. I did other stuff, like it'd be, some baseball, some in terms of like content, not other TV work. Basketball, Warriors, Giants, whatever. But the gift has been the Niners do not disappear in off seasons. They do not disappear in off seasons. Comment: Niners should have kept Cap. No, they shouldn't have. Nigel says, comment: Jaden Daniels is pretty good. Here's a fun fact. I, Heisman voter, voted for Michael Penix over Jaden Daniels for the Heisman. Jaden Daniels won the Heisman, running away. Also this year, I voted for Travis Hunter over Ashton Ginty, if that matters to anybody. I guess last year was Penix over Jaden Daniels. Who was the year before? I don't remember who I voted for. Oh, who was it? I have to go back and look. It was the year that TCU went to the championship game. It wasn't that quarter. I didn't vote for Max Duggan. Who was what was the Heisman voting in 2023 Heisman Award? I don't know. I mean, 22. 23 was Jaden. Oh, Caleb. Yeah, that was an easy one. Whatever, Caleb. Things change. Things change fast. CJ Stroud, things change. Darnold, things change. Brock, things change. My off-season take will be Purdy can get back to what he was last year, provided he's healthy and he gets to be the starting quarterback again. Herschel comment: Purdy hurt worse than the letting on. We're about to find out. Maybe we're about to find out. He looks rattled. He definitely looks rattled, but we'll see. All right. Look at this. Look at the notes here. I think I hit a lot of the notes. A reminder that I'm brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code Prize Picks. It's so much fun to play during the college football playoff games coming up. We got a game tomorrow night, Tuesday night, New Year's Eve. ASU, or sorry, Boise State, Penn State. Producer Connor's not with us on the show tonight because he and his brother Luca are off at the Fiesta Bowl. Because Luca's a Boise State Bronco, and they'll be shirtless in the crowd somewhere. So we'll keep an eye out for Connor on Tuesday night. But Prize Picks is great to play. I hit the $20 pays $500 lineup. $20. I won a $500 lineup, 6 players today. And it's easy. You use the code GUY, you make a $5 lineup. They immediately put $50 into your account. Whether you win or lose that $5 lineup, off you go. So you can make a lineup with the college games, include the NFL games, obviously. We'll have to wait and see kind of who's playing this coming weekend in the NFL. But so it'll be a fun week. I'm looking forward to football tomorrow night and football. What, football tomorrow night? Yeah, football tomorrow night, football Wednesday. Got to figure out what I'll do. I'll do something tomorrow, Purdy related, I'm sure. But bit of a wild week for me because New Year's Day, that night, I'll be watching Oregon, Ohio State. Second half on a plane. I'm flying to Eugene, and I will call the Illinois-Oregon basketball game from Eugene on January 2nd on FS1. Should be a great game. I'm going to fly to Seattle and do a basketball game in Seattle over the weekend. So, you know where to find me. One other thing. The 262 hats are available. Get them while they're hot. Surgery would not be great for a 262 hat. That's what we debated. Like, should we sell the hats now? We promised them all year long. 262nd pick, or should we wait till next year? And my thing was like, what if he gets hurt at the end of the year and never comes back? We got all these hats. So anyway, go to heyguy.co. You can get the 262 hat. I got a message from a listener today who said, I got the Hey Guy hat. It's high quality. Yes, it is. High quality hat with a rubber stamp up top. You go to heyguy.co. And do that. You can also send me a message if you don't want to buy a hat, but you want to send a message about something. Go to heyguy.co. The shop is there. The contact sheet is there. And you can get a hold of me. All right, everybody. Well, that was 2024. Happy New Year. Thanks to Prize Picks. Thanks to Puesto. Thanks to you. Thanks to the Niners for the